Hey, thanks for joining me. Going over a Hackerrank problem called Marc's Cakewalk today. So let's get straight into this thing. Marc loves cupcakes, but he also likes to stay fit. Each cupcake has a calorie count, and Marc can walk a distance to expend those calories. If Marc has eaten J cupcakes so far, after eating a cupcake with C calories, he must walk at least 2 to the J times C miles to maintain his weight. For example, if he eats 3 cupcakes with calorie counts in the following order 5, 10, 7, the miles he will need to walk are 2 to the 0 times 5 plus 2 to the 1 times 10 plus 2 to the 2 times 7, which equals 5 plus 20 plus 28, and that equals 53. This is not the minimum though, so we need to test other orders of consumption. In this case, our minimum miles is calculated as 2 to the 0 times 10, plus 2 to the 1 times 7, plus 2 to the 2 times 5, which equals 10 plus 14 plus 20, and that equals 44. Given the individual calorie counts for each of the cupcakes, determine the minimum number of miles Marc must walk to maintain his weight. Note that he can eat the cupcakes in any order. Alright, so we're looking for the number of miles this guy's got to walk. Important to note, our input is calorie, which is an array of integers that represent calorie count for each of the cupcakes. You probably noticed from the problem statement that if we had our information organized in descending order, all of the calories of the cupcakes, that would help us out. Or if we could go through them in descending order, that would help us out. Something to note for our solution. Also to note in our constraints is that our array size, n, is only 40, which is something that will be useful when we determine what our solution is. Alright, let's code this thing. The first thing that I'd want to do is I would want to make some type of a variable to hold the number of miles that Marc has to walk. And we just initialize that as 0. The next thing that I'd like to do, we could see that a sorted array or an array sorted in some type of descending order, whatever, an organization scheme to our array would be helpful to us. And that way we could maybe iterate through what we have. Something else that's interesting is that we start out with the 0th power and then increment to the 1st power and then the 2nd power. We could use that too. Basically, this suggests that we have 2 things together that we could iterate through in sequence. So it's relevant for our coding solution. So we have some place to put a sum of miles that Marc has to walk. We can start out making a for loop where we have a long called I that starts out equal to 0, and we want this for loop to increment as long as our incrementer I is less than the length of the calorie array. And then we could increment by 1 going through this array. At this point, all we really need to do is some math. We need to take that miles value that currently exists and then just add to it. We just have to do the math that was specified up here. 2 to the j times c miles. And it's kind of nicely written out right here. So I'll try and keep the same format in terms of what this looks like up here. I'll try and code it that way down here. So we use the math power function and we will raise 2 to the power of I. And that's where it comes in handy that our equation up here has said we could start out at 0 and then increment to 1 and 2. We can just use I down here. It's kind of handy. Then we multiply by, and as I'm thinking about this, we don't know what state the calorie array will necessarily come in as. So what may be useful to us is to use something called arrays.sort and sort the calorie array in ascending order. So now that we've got the calorie array sorted in ascending order, I want to actually multiply the largest calorie value by the smallest by the smallest power of 2 here. So basically, just want to move through the calorie array backwards. So we could do this. We say calorie array, and at what particular index, we would say calorie dot length minus 1. And that's because Java is a 0 index language. I just want to make that explicit, and then subtract I. In this way, we should be able to increment upwards through powers of I and increment downwards through our sorted calorie array. At this point, we should be able to just return miles, and you can't see it down here, but I run the code, processing, and then I got an error seeing this possible lossy conversion from long to int. Just change this guy to int, run it again, and things pass. Submit it to the full test suite, boom, everything passes. That's the solution right there. All right, so thanks for joining me today. Had a good time buzzing through this quick solution. If you're new here, please subscribe. If you liked the video, consider liking it. Hope to see you again, and thanks for joining me.